All right, guys, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be writing our formula for our sine or cosine function that has a midline at 0, 1, and then a maximum point at 7 pi over 4, 5. So let's start by thinking, are we going to use sine or cosine? So if you remember, sine starts at the midline and goes through a hill and then a valley. It's our typical sine. Cosine usually starts at the top and then ends at the top. So if you think about it, sine's going to start on the midline and then go to a maximum point. So it starts on the midline, then goes to a maximum. Compared to cosine starts at the maximum, then the midline. So if you look at our problem here, it says we're starting with the midline and then we have our maximum. So that's going to go with sine. So this is sine, this is cosine. We're going to be rolling with sine because we're starting on the midline and then going to the maximum. So our general formula is going to be a sine of bx plus c plus d. So we got to go ahead and try to figure these things out. So let's just start with our graph of those points. Always helps to kind of get a visual of what's going on right here. So we have the point 0, 1. Let's put that right here, right on the y-axis. X is 0, y is 1. So here's 0, 1. And then our next point is going to be 7 pi over 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 5. So I'll put the point right there. There's 7 pi over 4, 5. So if you think about that, this is the first quarter of our sine function, and then from there, the rest of it would go through. But this is just the first quarter of it as far as the horizontal distance, as far as the period. So let's go ahead, let's start with our amplitude. So our amplitude, here's the things we need. We're going to need to know what A is, what B is. Technically C over B, that's our horizontal shift. And then last D. So let's just start, let's start with D. That's our midline. It says right here that our midline is 0, 1. So you can see that right here. The midline is 0, 1. That's really easy. So D is 1. Let's do our amplitude next. So our amplitude is the vertical distance from the midline to the maximum, or the midline to the minimum. So right here, this is a total, if you were to count from 1 up to 5, that's a distance of 4. You could always subtract. But that would be our amplitude, so that would be 4. So we've already covered A, we've covered D. Let's go ahead and look. Does this shift left or right? Well, typically we start on the y-axis, and here we're starting on the y-axis, so no, we don't really have a horizontal shift here. If it was something like it started on the midline right here and then went through its curve, then it would have a horizontal shift. But it's not doing that, so we have no horizontal shift. It's right on the y-axis that it's starting. Last, let's figure out B. So we need to know what the period is. We know that the period is equal to 2 pi over B. Well, we don't really have what B is. We're trying to find it. So let's figure out from this picture here, this graph, what the period would be, and then use that to solve for B. So a quarter of our period, that's the horizontal distance, a quarter of our period is 7 pi over 4. So a quarter of our distance there is 7 pi over 4, but we need to know our whole distance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 7 pi over 4, so a quarter of our period is 7 pi over 4. I'm going to go ahead, you can just multiply the 4 to the other side, and our period would then equal 7 pi, because you're just multiplying this by 4. And so since our period is 7 pi, let's just go ahead and set 2 pi over b equal to 7 pi and figure out what b is. So 2 pi over b equals 7 pi. I'm going to make it a fraction just to make our cross multiplication easier. So cross multiply b times 7 over pi, b times 7 pi is 7 pi b equals 2 pi. And then divide the 7 pi to the other side, and you'll get 2 pi over 7 pi. The pi's cancel out, and 2 over 7 is b. So we don't really have to worry about c. That's kind of nice. But our final answer is going to be 4 sine of 2 over 7x plus 1.